In previous videos, we looked at multiplying binomials two different ways. We used what's called the area model, and we use what's called the distributive property. And so we're going to use those same things to multiply these two numbers together, these two binomials together. So if we did the area model, what we did is we had a box or a square or a rectangle. I guess it could be anything, because we just really use this again as a method for organizing our information. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but we just, a little bit more perfect than that. How about that? There we go. But what we're going to do is we're going to multiply these two things together, and to distinguish them, let's change this color to blue. Why not? So to multiply these two things together, what we do is we took, using the area model, we took x minus 1 and we put that on one of our sides. So we're going to have x, and we're going to put minus 1 here. Now, last time what we had done is we only had positive values. We only had pluses or addition problems inside here. So I'm going to change it to x plus a negative 1. And even though this is a negative, and it may not necessarily make sense with the area model, if you were trying to find an actual area, we can still use this same technique to multiply together two things if they've got positive or negative signs in there. So on the left side, we'll call that x plus 1. On the right side, we'll call this x plus a negative 1 as well. And just like before, we're going to find the area of this space. We're going to find the area of this space. We're going to find the area of this space. And then we're going to find the area of this space. And we're going to put it all together to find the product of these two binomials. So we're going to take x times x, and that's going to give us a value of x squared. Let's make that a little bit clearer. X squared. We're going to take x for this dimension here and negative 1 for this. So again, don't worry that it's got a minus sign or a negative sign there. We can still use the same technique. X times a negative 1. Okay, that just means that we're going to have negative 1x. And then we're going to take this x for here, x, and multiply it by this negative 1. So now we've got x times negative 1, and that gives us another negative 1x. And then finally, we're going to take negative 1 times negative 1, or negative 1 times negative 1. Negative 1 times negative 1 is equal to a positive 1. So notice I also kept the sign here, but what we're going to do is we're going to add purple, green, pink, and yellow, and we're going to have x squared plus a negative 1x plus a negative 1x plus 1. And these again come from purple, from green, from pink, and from yellow. And we end up with x squared. Let's give a little bit more space here. We come up with x squared, and we combine these. A negative 1x plus another negative 1x is going to be a negative 2x. So notice you don't have to put the plus a negative. You can just do minus 2x too. Minus 2x also. And then plus 1. And there is our product. Now we could do the same thing using the distributive property like we've done in the past as well. So if we've got x plus 1 times x, well, sorry, not x plus 1, x minus 1 times x minus 1, I'm still going to do the same thing. I'm still going to, just like we did before at the distributive property, I'm going to break this. Let's move that over there. I'm going to break this parentheses apart, and I'm going to multiply it by everything in there. So I'm going to take x, my black x, and I'm going to multiply it by everything inside the second parentheses. And then I'm going to take a minus 1, and I'm going to multiply it by everything inside the parentheses. And now I'm just going to multiply all of these different pieces together. So I've got x times x, there's my x squared. X times a negative 1 gives me a negative 1x. Negative 1 times x gives me a negative 1x. And a negative 1 times a negative 1, this negative 1 times this negative 1 will give me a positive 1. And just like with the area model, we combine our like terms, and we get x squared minus 2x plus 1, and there is our product of these two binomials. Now, here we had two binomials where we had a subtraction. You could have any combination of these things. So let's look at I'll just make one up, a kind of a weird looking one. Let's do x plus 3, and maybe we do negative x minus 5. And we could still do this same exact thing even with this. Again, these models that we're using are just techniques to multiply all this stuff together. So let's build our area model. So here we go. And I'm going to I'm just breaking it up just so I can get a feel for the different things that I'm multiplying together. I don't really care about the shape or the dimensions and if it actually makes a square or anything like that. But I'm going to have x plus 3, x and a positive 3, and then I'm going to have a negative x plus a negative 5. So that's going to give me this thing here. So let's start. X times a negative x, that's going to be a negative x squared. A negative x times a negative x is a negative x squared. Positive 3 times a negative x. Let's see if we've got a positive times a negative. That's going to be a negative. And then I'm left with minus 3x. I'm going to take x times a negative 5. So just like this one. A positive times a negative is a negative. So I know I'm going to have a negative. And then 5 times x is just 5x. And then positive 3 times negative 5 minus 15. So when I combine all of this, I've got negative x squared minus 3x minus 5x minus 15. I'm going to combine my like terms here, and I end up with negative x squared minus 8x minus 15. And there I have multiplied these two binomials together. Again, distributive property doesn't matter. We can do the same thing. X times negative x minus 5. And we could do plus 3 and a negative x, not negative 5, negative x minus 5. I could have broken this one up too if I wanted. I could have had a negative x on the outside, and the same process would have been the same. I could have done negative x and then have x plus 3, and I could have a negative 5 here and x plus 3. Whatever you like, that's what you put in there, and then you go through the same process, and you're still going to end up with the same stuff. So we got negative x squared. X times negative 5 is minus 5x. We know exactly where this is going. Positive 3 times negative x. So we have minus 3x. And then we have positive 3 times minus 5 minus 15. Combine these similar or like terms, and we end up with negative x squared minus 8x minus 15. And we have now multiplied together two binomials, even if they've got positives and negatives mixed in there.